Hey everyone, welcome back to Crypto Cash. Thank you so much for joining me here. I hope you're having a fantastic day, amazing day, whatever you want to call it. It's hopefully a very good one. And what we're going to do is take a look at Terra Classic, help you understand the best practice and big picture for situations like this. When a price shoots up, starts to retrace, bounces off support, loses support, retests it, and potentially works as a resistance. We'll see, of course, what that looks like and what that means. And I also want to draw a correlation between this and Bitcoin and kind of just show you how much better Terra Classic is doing than Bitcoin is in the overall sense of maintaining a good price point in the face of just complete nonsensical sell-off, right? Because we saw yesterday Bitcoin was down about 8.5% on the day, and it absolutely just all the profits that were coming up were taken down, right? So it comes up to retest that 20,000 range, and of course just dumps out from there. So interesting behavior, but what we want to see, of course, is that correlation. I think it's important to know how the two coins are working together, because if you can identify a separation or a concurrent type of behavior with altcoins and of course Bitcoin, it really helps increase your odds of success, right? And those are things we want to focus on. Because again, speaking of success, we've taken some pretty healthy profits recently as a community. Just to quickly jump in here too, yesterday or last night, I guess you could say, we took about 20. It took 20 hours to take 31% off of Bitcoin. We trimmed about 21% in 4 hours prior to that. And then, of course, over the weekend, basically later through the weekend, we actually had another 57% from Bitcoin, a 44% from Ethereum, and of course 4% for spot. And then we also had some XRP profits as well at 41% too, and that was only 6 hours. So again, a lot of cool stuff that's happening. So if you want to become a better trader, CryptoCash.tech is the site. I have Signals, Trading University, and of course, really a fantastic community at your back. Everyone's willing to help, and it's just an awesome experience. So be sure to check that out in your own time. Very last thing too, of course, is BitGet. I have an affiliation with them. I partnered with them because I love that they offer leverage in the United States without a VPN. It's just an uncommon thing nowadays, and I think it's really cool and my favorite exchange by all means, because of the fact that they are so fluent and the website is just super easy to use. They have awesome demos too. So be sure to check that out if you're new, and you can also benefit from some transfer funds. You get some bonus USDT if you transfer funds over and actually use the exchange. So once again, be sure to use the exchange. You can't just transfer funds and leave it. They want to make sure that obviously you are moving forward with their exchange, but again, you'll be super happy that you transitioned over. I used to use ByBit and KuCoin, and those are a thing of the past. BitGet, 100%. All right, so taking a look here at Terra Classics, the thing I want to touch on first, we'll just kind of just open out the gates with this, is the correlation between Bitcoin and Terra Classic. And when I say correlation, I simply am stating that they're not directly aligned, even though there are some times when it was. In other words, previously, when the price action is retracing, we saw a very strong correlation. And that's common for coins that are overextended. They'll tend to be selling off first because Bitcoin dominance will increase and altcoin dominance essentially decreases. So that being said, Terra Classic was absolutely aligned with that. Now, when it hit this bottom here, and of course we have that burn news from Binance, that allowed the price action to shoot up, of course, and kind of almost, in essence, become independent. And let's go ahead and take a look here. So first of all, when was the dump from Bitcoin? So Bitcoin dump essentially was from 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. on September 27th. So we take a look at that. That's right here. These are the two candles here that the Terra Classic saw as a result of Bitcoin selling off. So Terra Classic corrected itself by 6.5%, where Bitcoin was 8.5%. Keep in mind, most alts are 2x of Bitcoin when it goes down. Right, so an 8% correction, a lot of coins saw 16 to 20% correction, whereas Terra Classic only saw about 6.5%. So to me, that's a very positive sign that really helps us understand that 28,000, at least the range of 27 to 28,000 is a good support zone. But furthermore, just kind of reiterating the fact that there's some independence from Bitcoin and that it's kind of marching to the beat of its own drum. And that's a good sign. Ultimately, that usually leads to potential breakouts, and for things like this to occur more frequently. Once again, this is fairly unhealthy. I don't like that, but in truth, parabolic type of behavior can happen a lot faster and easier when the coins are not aligned like that. Okay, so again, that's just kind of a good little preface to kind of help understand generally where we're at, and also too to understand the market too and where we're at right now. Dollar index is down, big surprise. Bitcoin is up, traditional markets are up as well. Okay, that's a very standard thing. Keep this in mind though, Bitcoin dominance is still on the rise. Okay, which is why we see a lot of altcoins still fairly suffering today, because they're not ready to commit to Bitcoin being at 19,500. They're a little gun shy with it coming up here to test 20,500, right? So again, just some little things to kind of think about. Train your brain to kind of understand more than just what you see on the specific time frame for the chart. You want to look at all different time frames, and these are things I teach my community members as well through my university, is to make sure that you have good perspective. You want to extract as much as you can from every single time frame to ensure that you're on the right track. Okay. Again, it's a numbers game. You're only increasing your odds by being more thorough. Okay, so try to think of that. So here we are on the daily. First of all, something to kind of note. Let's go ahead and take a look at the moving averages. We're back up over the 50. We kind of only stayed down there for about a day or so, and that's wonderful. So that should continue to work as a support level moving up. It's usually in a type of ascending trend. So generally speaking, you'll see the 50 work itself concurrent with a lot of moving averages and of course a lot of trend lines. Okay, so again, just generally speaking, this is a positive sign to see the price action continue higher and essentially create that foundation of volume. Speaking of volume, of course, we can see that the most amount of volume is right at this price point, as I mentioned before, close to about 28,000. Okay, just a little over, maybe more so 29,000 for the most amount of volume, but that's still a pretty healthy amount there. Okay. Another thing that's good too is that this little gap here, even though it's there's not a tremendous amount of volume, we were able to fill a little bit of volume there and kind of create a little stronger base. So this should likely be the bottom that we're going to see here from Terra Classic in the immediate future. Right, so once again, 20,000, 19,500, right in that range should be the effective bottom for now. Speaking of bottom, we're bouncing off of 50 on the RSI, and I say bounce because technically it hasn't bounced yet. I apologize, I'm probably not the best word for it, but generally speaking, you can oftentimes see 50 work as a support level, and the price will continue higher from there. So that leads me to believe that we're still here at this point where we should expect the price to continue higher. Now, again, I'm not expecting the price to just blast off, right? You got to train your brain to understand that those kind of parabolic increases are not beneficial because it takes a while for them to retrace. But at this point, we are looking pretty good here in the sense that it looks like it's trying to find its average true range, and that is positive. Taking a look, of course, at the MACD, we can see we're kind of flattening out there, but the positivity here is that this momentum is waning. So it's starting to dissipate, and that's an extremely important thing. Whether or not we have a convergence is irrelevant. What's important is that we're losing that momentum to the downside, and we should likely experience some sideways action for some time, and then, of course, a potential increase when it hits that critical point. Okay, 4 hour here. Let's go ahead and take a look at the 4 hour time frame. And kind of see, obviously, we understand this large candle here that was like 65% in basically just 1 hour. That's what happens when you have some fundamental catalyst type of news that pushes the price action higher. But regardless of that fact, it's held itself in pretty good shape, all things considered. But once again, averaging itself out here between 27 and 29,000. So taking a look at TD sequential, let's quickly understand here. We came down to an 8 on TD sequential here recently. Basically just implying that we saw a solid 32 hours of continuation of the downside. So that is healthy and well, but on the same accord, it's going to likely continue sideways or up from here based on that sentiment. Because again, in most cases, when you hit a 9, you'll see it turn itself around. Okay, now this is an example of when it didn't do that because it was working down on a descending type of trend. Right now, we're not necessarily on a descending trend, but what we could do is kind of draw out a trend line here and kind of see how that maintains over the next few hours. Okay, but the bottom line that I'm trying to get at is with us being close to an 8, we became overextended to the downside. We had, once again, 30 hours of continuation in that same direction. So a recovery makes sense as a result of that, right? A lot of times and a lot of trades that I take are oftentimes coins that are just overextended to one side. They bounce off, the standard deviation lines and the volume weighted average price, and they continue in the opposite direction. So I would say momentum plays are absolutely a thing that you can kind of do in swing trading. Day trading as well, of course, don't get wrong, but most of my trades I like to hold for, 12, 24, possibly 48 hours, somewhere in that range. Some go a little bit longer, of course, we don't hit our target right away. But that's just because bear markets right now, with all these candle wicks and these crazy candlesticks, it's important to be very careful with your investment, use low leverage, and ensure that you stay successful. Again, that's basically just the way that it works with our community too. Always making sure that we use best practice when we continue to trade and ensure we learn from our mistakes if we're making them, right? Because plenty of mistakes have been made. You gotta understand, I've made so many in my day, but I make a lot less now, and the main reason why is just because I'm very cautious, careful, and of course I position size effectively and use good risk tolerance, or risk management. Essentially, my risk tolerance is, in my opinion, very sound based on the amount that I use, right? Again, you all have different strategies, but that's kind of just some positive advice there, kind of letting you know that it's not as bad as you might think. Trading is very, I wouldn't say easy, it takes practice, but it's easy once you get it down and you get the fundamentals, right? And those are all things I teach in my university. So take a look here, of course, at 50 on the RSI. Same scenario here. We covered this yesterday. Bouncing off 50 on the RSI would be positive, which it has done. Now it's going to try to retest that a second time. Could be a double bottom, if you will, right? You can still see double bottoms on the RSI, and it oftentimes will continue. So we're right at this point, though, where we have a MACD divergence, okay? So this is something to recognize. This is a very common trading technique in swing trading. In other words, when you are taking a trade to the long side or the short side, if there's a convergence or a divergence on the 4-hour time frame, that's usually a firm indication of the fact that you're continuing that same direction. So, contrary to all the positivity that we're seeing here, there is a solid chance that based on this here, we could see the price action continue lower. Okay. Now again, just saying in general, that's what the momentum is telling us, because that's how momentum works, right? Over the last 14 candlesticks, essentially, it's telling us that we are positively above that support level on the RSI. But the moving average convergence divergence is telling us that the 12-day exponential moving average is intersecting with the 26 in a downward fashion, and that's effectively going to give us a potential divergence continuation, okay? So just keep that in mind. I would say it's more likely, we're more likely to see a little further downside perhaps before we see a bounce, but again, we have a strong support level based on volume at this level too. And this independence from Bitcoin, so to speak, is positive as well, but you got to keep this in mind. Bitcoin dominance is going up. What do you think altcoins are doing? They're getting sold off, right? So it's very standard for this to happen. So I'm willing to speculate if Bitcoin has a bad day near the end of today's trading day, that Terra Classic will continue to increase because money comes away from Bitcoin, it goes into altcoins, and that's essentially the cycle that we see. Okay, so again, just some big picture stuff to think about, right? Good old stuff. All right, so when we look at the TD sequential here on the 1 hour, we can't see any specific patterns. It's really hitting 4s, 5s, and 6s and resetting. So it's just kind of slowly bleeding down, and until it hits its bottom and we start to see higher lows, then we're going to be in a continuation pattern. So this next low has to be higher than this previous low. Okay, so if this next low comes down to here and just say bottoms out, then we're going to continue lower. However, if we continue to see the price action come up here and start making higher lows, that's absolutely a trend reversal, and we're seeing the price action shift bearishly to potentially bullish. Okay, so again, then that's generally what we're looking at here in that sense. Taking a look at the Ichimoku cloud, something to recognize here as well is that we are within the cloud. It's typically a no buy zone. Okay, when you're within the cloud, you're still within support because the lower lead works as a support level, and so does the upper. But since we lost the upper lead, we got to allow for the lower lead to either bounce and hold the price action in place, or if we lose it, then that would be a potential short signal. So again, at this point, we're not really seeing anything solid for the for Terra Classic as far as like a definitive direction in which you want to take. But it absolutely looks like it wants to bottom out here at this level, but we've also got some other indications telling us it might want to continue lower. So, to me, it's almost a 50-50 at this point. And I don't really like to gamble on 50-50 probabilities. That to me is gambling, and I don't really like those odds. I'd much rather have a 60, 70, 80% probability of something going through. So I would just recommend holding off until we get confirmation either above or below the cloud. If that MACD divergence continues, then we can buy in at a lower price. If it comes up, heaven forbid, we'll find another dip to buy. That's okay. You've got to be patient. You got to learn how to do that, and that's just kind of the nature of the game. Okay. So again, generally speaking, mostly positive here for Terra Classic. I wouldn't overthink it, but I think it's very nice and good in the sense of the fact that it's independent from Bitcoin in that regard. Wasn't super. It didn't sell off like massive. This recent pump has held in place because of what happened. So it's really, really nice. So those are really good things that I like to kind of focus on and look at. So I would say generally positive here, but as far as confirmation on a trade, I don't see a confirmation. Okay, so in that regard, I would not recommend taking a trade at this exact moment. We got to let's make sure to look for the higher lows. If we can establish a new higher low, then we're in pretty good shape. I think that would allow for us to continue the price action higher. Okay, one last thing here, we can just kind of draw this trend line out here. You can kind of see there's potential for a breakout to the upside if it bounces here soon. All right, just something to kind of think about. Hopefully this made sense and I explained things correctly to you. And that's the whole point of this, of what I do, is to ensure that you learn how to become a better trader. I don't want you to be reliant on me. I want you to do this yourself, right? And I think there's a lot of folks out there trying to give you the answers and not helping you understand the reason behind it. And that's what I like to do. So I just love teaching. Hope you learned something here today. I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day as well. Thank you so much for your time. We'll see you in the next one.